They called it mercy, a human sacrifice to keep the abyss fed and the pack safe. But when they bound Miranda Coffey's wrists with iron chains and hurled her into the endless black void, they didn't see the Alpha King's 6-year-old son watching from the shadows. They didn't see him jump. The abyss had never returned a soul in 300 years, until it spat out two. One human girl with eyes that glowed like dying stars. One wolf pup who would move heaven and hell to keep her. This is the story of a sacrifice who became a goddess, and the boy who loved her before he even understood what love meant. This is the story of how the abyss chose its queen, and how she brought an empire to its knees. Chapter 1. The Sacrifice. The wind at the edge of Salvation Point didn't howl, it wept. Miranda stood barefoot on the crumbling stone platform, her thin white ceremonial dress doing nothing against the cold that seeped up from the abyss below. The void stretched beneath her, a wound in the earth so deep and so black that even moonlight died before reaching its bottom. The air around it shimmered with wrongness, with the scent of copper and rotting flowers. Behind her, the entire Crimson Fang pack had gathered. 200 wolves in human form, dressed in their finest clothes as if this were a wedding instead of a murder. They stood in a semicircle, silent and solemn, watching the monthly ritual that kept their lands fertile and their enemies afraid. Alpha King Robert Case stood at the front, a mountain of a man with silver threading through his black hair and eyes the color of winter storms. He wore ceremonial robes trimmed in gold, but his face was carved from stone. No emotion, no mercy, just duty. Beside him stood his wife, Queen Elvira Bush, beautiful and cold as fresh snow. Her hand rested on the shoulder of their son, a small boy with messy dark hair and eyes too gold to be entirely human. The boy's name was Toby. He was 6 years old, and he was staring at Miranda with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Miranda Coffey," the Alpha King's voice boomed across the gathering, formal and final. "You have been chosen by the elders, marked by fate, and offered to the abyss as payment for our protection. Do you accept your sacred duty?" Miranda's throat was dry. Her wrists were bound with iron cuffs that burned against her skin, inscribed with runes that prevented her from running. Not that running would help. The pack enforcers surrounded the platform, their eyes glowing wolf gold in the darkness. Her voice cracked. She tried again. "I don't want to die." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone laughed, sharp and cruel. "The abyss doesn't care what you want, girl," Elder Wayne Norris called out from the crowd, his weathered face twisted with disdain. "You're human. You have no wolf. You've been having those cursed dreams since you were a child. Animals follow you like you're some kind of witch. You're marked, girl. Better to feed you to the darkness than let you poison the pack from within." Miranda's hands trembled. It was true. She'd always been different. While other children presented as wolves at puberty, she'd remained stubbornly, pathetically human. And the dreams, visions of shadow and teeth and a voice that whispered her name in languages she didn't understand, those had started when she was 8. The pack had tolerated her because her parents had been loyal warriors, killed in the territorial wars, but tolerance had limits. "The abyss is hungry," Queen Elvira said, her voice melodious and merciless. "It has protected us for generations. We feed it, and in return, our crops grow, our enemies fear us. Our borders hold strong. One life for thousands. It's simple mathematics." Miranda looked at the queen and saw no compassion, just calculation. She turned her gaze to the little boy, Toby. He was still staring at her, his small hands clenched into fists at his sides. His mother's grip on his shoulder tightened, as if sensing something wrong. "Any last words?" the Alpha King asked, already stepping forward to perform the final rites. Miranda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. What could she say? That she'd spent her whole life trying to be useful, trying to earn her place? That she'd cooked their meals, tended their wounded, taught their children to read? None of it mattered. She was human, She was other. She was expendable. The Alpha King grabbed her by the arm, his grip bruising as he dragged her to the very edge of the platform. Below, the abyss yawned like a hungry mouth. "May the darkness take you swiftly," he intoned, the traditional blessing that was anything but. He released her arm. For one breathless moment, Miranda teetered on the edge, her toes curling over empty air. Then she fell. The scream ripped from her throat as gravity seized her. The world-inverted sky, where ground should be, stars spinning wildly. The walls of the abyss rushed past her, slick black stone that seemed to pulse like living flesh. The air grew thick, viscous, fighting against her fall but not stopping it. She tumbled through darkness so complete it had weight, had texture, had hunger. And then she heard it. A sound from above, a child's voice, high and clear, screaming a single word, "No." Miranda twisted in the air, looking up just in time to see a small shape plummet after her, a boy with gold eyes, diving headfirst into the abyss with his arms outstretched. "Toby!" The Queen's shriek echoed down the void, raw with horror. The Alpha King's roar shook the stone. "Toby! No!" But it was too late. The boy fell like a comet, his small hand reaching for Miranda's. Their fingers brushed once, twice, and then locked together as the darkness below opened wide and swallowed them both whole. The last thing Miranda heard before the abyss consumed her was the sound of bones cracking, skin splitting, and a child screaming as his body tried to shift into a wolf too young to complete the transformation. Then there was nothing but black, and the whisper of an ancient voice. "Welcome home, daughter. Welcome home, little king. Payment accepted. Contract amended." Chapter 2. The Abyss Touched. Miranda woke to the sensation of something warm and wet dragging across her cheek. Her entire body felt like it had been shattered and poorly reassembled. Every breath was agony. Her ribs screamed. Her head throbbed with a pressure that made her vision swim. She forced her eyes open. The first thing she saw was darkness. Not the absence of light, but darkness that had substance. It moved like smoke, curling around stone formations that jutted from the ground like broken teeth. Above her, there was no sky, just a ceiling of living shadow that pulsed with a heartbeat she could feel in her bones. The second thing she saw was the wolf. It was small, the size of a full-grown dog, with fur as black as the void around them. Its eyes glowed molten gold, too intelligent, too aware. Blood matted its shoulder where bone had clearly broken through skin and healed wrong. The wolf whined softly and licked her face again. "Toby?" Miranda's voice came out as a rasp. The wolf's ears perked up. He pressed his nose against her hand, trembling. Miranda tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain exploded through her left shoulder. She looked down and gasped. Her arm was covered in black veins that pulsed with a faint luminescence, spreading from her shoulder down to her fingertips like ink in water. "What?" She touched the veins and they hummed beneath her skin, vibrating with power that felt ancient and wrong and somehow right. The wolf Toby nudged her hand away from the marks, growling softly, protective. Miranda looked around properly for the first time. They were in a cave, but not a natural one. The walls were smooth, carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Glowing moss clung to the ceiling, providing just enough light to see by. In the corner, there was a pile of strange items, bones that gleamed like pearl, fruits that shimmered with an inner light, and a pool of water so clear it looked like liquid glass. "How long have we been here?" Miranda whispered. Toby shifted on his paws, unable to answer. He tried to shift back to human form. She could see the attempt in the way his body shuddered, and bones started to crack, but the transformation failed. He collapsed with a yelp of pain, panting. "Don't," Miranda said quickly, reaching for him despite the agony in her shoulder. "Don't hurt yourself." The wolf crawled into her lap, surprisingly heavy, and pressed his face against her chest. She could feel him shaking. Miranda stroked his fur with her good hand, her mind racing. They'd fallen into the abyss. They should be dead. The abyss never returned what it took. That was the whole point of the sacrifices. So why were they alive? And why did the darkness feel like it was watching them? As if in answer to her thought, the shadows in the corner of the cave began to move. They coalesced into a shape, not quite human, not quite anything else. It had too many limbs and not enough face, and when it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The little king protects the daughter. How unexpected. Miranda's heart hammered against her ribs. She pulled Toby closer, and the wolf snarled at the shadow thing, his small body vibrating with a growl too deep for his size. "What are you?" Miranda demanded, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I am the voice. I am the keeper. I am the abyss, made manifest to speak with those too small to comprehend the whole." The shadow thing tilted its head at an angle that was physically impossible. "You should be dissolved by now, human child. Your essence should be feeding the roots of the world above." But the little king's blood, it complicated things. His blood? Miranda looked down at Toby, who was still growling. "Royal blood carries power. Ancient covenants. When he dove after you, when his bones broke and his blood mixed with yours in the fall, the abyss tasted something it had not tasted in millennia. Devotion, sacrifice, love without understanding." The thing laughed, a sound like wind through a graveyard. The abyss finds this amusing, and so it offers a bargain. What kind of bargain? Miranda's fingers tightened in Toby's fur. 3 years in the above world have passed. Here, only 3 months. Time bends in the deep places. You have survived because the little king hunted for you, protected you while you slept through the healing. He has been very busy. Miranda looked at Toby with new understanding. He'd kept her alive. A 6-year-old boy, well, 9 now, if 3 years had really passed, had survived in literal hell to protect her. The bargain is this: I will teach you to wield the marks you now bear. I will show you the paths that lead back to the surface, but in return, you will owe the abyss a debt. One day, payment will be demanded. Do you accept? And if I refuse, then you stay here until you fade. The little king will stay with you. He refuses to leave. I have tried to send him back. He bites. Toby's tail thumped once against her leg, almost proud. Miranda closed her eyes. 3 years. The pack thought them dead. Probably celebrated that the abyss had taken both the cursed human and the alpha heir in one night. If they went back, what would they face? But staying here meant death. Slow or fast, it didn't matter. "I accept," Miranda said. The shadow thing's laughter echoed through the cave. "Wise choice, daughter. Now, let us begin. The marks on your skin, touch them. Feel them. They are your birthright." Finally awakened, Miranda hesitated, then pressed her palm against the black veins on her arm. Power exploded through her. She gasped as visions flooded her mind, the abyss as a living entity, vast and ancient beyond comprehension. She saw the original bargain, struck 3 centuries ago between the first Alpha King and the darkness. Sacrifices in exchange for power, blood for prosperity, and she saw something else. A prophecy carved into the very foundations of the abyss. When the marked daughter returns from the deep and the little king claims her as his own, the covenant will shatter and reform. The old bargain will end. A new reign will begin. Miranda's eyes snapped open. They were glowing. She could see it reflected in the pool of water her irises had turned silver, shot through with veins of black. "What am I?" she whispered. "You are abyss-touched. You are the one the old queens feared. You are the reason they tried to kill you before you could awaken." The shadow thing moved closer. "And now, you will learn what that means." Toby pressed against her side, his warmth anchoring her as the darkness began its lessons. Time had no meaning in the abyss. Days bled into weeks. Miranda learned to command the shadows, to see in perfect darkness, to hear the whispers of things that had never lived and would never die. The marks on her skin spread, creeping up her neck and down her spine, each new vein a channel for power. Toby grew stronger too. He couldn't shift back to human form, but his wolf body became larger, faster, deadlier. He learned to hunt the creatures that dwelled in the deep things with too many eyes and voices that mimicked loved ones. He brought her food, strange glowing fruits that tasted like starlight, meat from beasts she'd never seen, and every night he curled around her while she slept, keeping watch. Miranda tried repeatedly to coax him back to human form, speaking softly, telling him stories of the world above, promising him safety. But something was broken inside him, the trauma of the fall, the forced shift at too young an age, or perhaps just the abyss itself had changed him too deeply. Finally, the day came when the voice appeared one last time. "The paths are open, you are ready. Go, daughter, go, little king. But remember, the abyss always collects its debts." The shadows parted, revealing a tunnel that sloped upward. Faint, light, real, honest sunlight filtered down from somewhere far above. Miranda stood, testing her strength. Her shoulder had healed completely. Her body felt different now, stronger, faster. Humming with power she was still learning to control. Toby stood beside her, his head reaching her waist now. He was massive for a wolf, easily the size of a full-grown male. His gold eyes fixed on the tunnel, then back to her. Miranda reached down and buried her fingers in his fur. "Ready to go home?" she asked softly. Toby's answering growl was low and determined. Together, they began to climb. Chapter 3: The Return. They emerged from the earth on the night of a new moon, when darkness held dominion over the world. Miranda crawled out of the narrow fissure in the mountainside, gasping as fresh air, real air, not the thick atmosphere of the abyss, filled her lungs. Behind her, Toby squeezed through, his massive wolf form barely fitting through the opening. She stood on shaking legs, looking around. They were on the eastern slope of Salvation Peak, miles from the pack's main territory. Through the trees, she could see lights in the distance. The estate, home. Except it had never really been home, had it? Miranda looked down at herself. Her white ceremonial dress had long since rotted away in the abyss. Now she wore clothing made from shadow cloth. The voice had gifted her a simple black dress that moved like liquid and never tore. Her feet were bare, but the cold didn't touch her anymore. Nothing touched her the way it used to. She caught her reflection in a pool of rainwater and barely recognized herself. Her hair had grown long, falling past her waist in dark waves. Her eyes still glowed silver when she called on her power, though they looked almost normal when she wasn't. The black veins were visible on her arms and neck, impossible to hide. Toby nudged her hand with his nose, whining softly. "I know," Miranda whispered. "We can't hide what we've become, but your father, he needs to know you're alive." They made their way down the mountain, moving through the forest with unnatural silence. Miranda's new senses were overwhelming. She could hear heartbeats in the trees, smell emotions on the wind, feel the vibrations of footsteps miles away. As they approached the main clearing, Miranda heard voices, lots of them. She crept to the edge of the tree line and felt her blood turn to ice. They were preparing another sacrifice. The platform at Salvation Point had been rebuilt, reinforced. The crowd was even larger than before, the entire pack, plus visitors from neighboring territories. And kneeling on the platform, wrists bound in iron, was a girl who couldn't have been more than 14. She was crying silently, her thin shoulders shaking. By the ancient covenant, Alpha King Robert's voice boomed across the clearing. "We offer this life to the abyss. May the darkness be satisfied. May our lands remain blessed." Miranda felt something snap inside her chest. The shadows around her began to move. Toby snarled, the sound building in his chest, like thunder. He didn't wait for her command. He burst from the tree line, a black blur of fur and fury, heading straight for the platform. The crowd erupted in screams. "Wolf!" someone shouted. "Rogue wolf!" Enforcers shifted, their clothes tearing as they took their wolf forms. They moved to intercept Toby, but Miranda was faster. She stepped out of the shadows, literally stepped through them, emerging from the darkness behind the platform. The black veins on her skin ignited with silver light, and the shadows around her rose like living creatures, forming a wall between Toby and the enforcers. The clearing fell into shocked silence. "Stop," Miranda said, and her voice echoed with the power of the abyss itself. Alpha King Robert spun around, his face draining of color. Impossible. Queen Elvira's perfectly composed mask shattered. She stumbled backward, one hand clutching her throat. "You're dead. You're supposed to be dead." "Surprise," Miranda said coldly. She walked forward, and the crowd parted before her like water. The shadows followed, writhing at her feet. She could feel their fear, sharp and delicious on her tongue. These people who had thrown her away, who had stood by and watched her die, now they looked at her like she was something from their worst nightmares. Good. Miranda reached the platform and knelt beside the terrified girl. With a gesture, the iron cuffs shattered, falling away in pieces. "Run," Miranda told her gently. "You're free." The girl didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled off the platform and disappeared into the crowd. Miranda stood and turned to face the Alpha King. Toby had fought his way through the enforcers, not hurting them, just knocking them aside, and now stood at her side. His lips pulled back in a snarl. Robert stared at the massive black wolf, recognition dawning slowly in his eyes. "Toby?" The wolf's ears flattened against his skull. 3 years, Miranda said, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. 3 years we survived in the abyss. 3 years your son kept me alive, hunted for me, protected me, while you stood here and kept feeding innocent people to the darkness. The covenant must be maintained." Elder Wayne stepped forward, his face twisted with fear and anger. The abyss demands nothing," Miranda interrupted. The shadows surged, and Wayne stumbled back. The covenant was a lie, a bargain made by cowards who traded lives for power they didn't deserve. Queen Elvira found her voice, cold and sharp as broken glass. "You have no authority here, girl. You're an abomination." Abyss touched. "You should have stayed in the darkness where you belong." "Mother," a voice said. Everyone froze. The massive black wolf shimmered, bones cracked and reformed, fur receded into skin. The transformation was violent and wrong, fighting against itself, but it completed. Toby stood there, naked and shaking, looking exactly as he had 3 years ago, still a small boy of 6, though his eyes held the weight of ages. The abyss had preserved him, kept him from aging while they were trapped below. "Toby!" Robert lunged forward, but the boy held up one hand and the Alpha King stopped as if he'd hit a wall. "You let her fall," Toby said, his voice rough from disuse. "You threw her away. I watched you." "You don't understand," Elvira said, her composure cracking. "It was necessary. She was marked, cursed." The elders said. "The elders lied," Miranda said. She moved to stand beside Toby, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "I wasn't cursed. I was prophesied. There's a difference." She let her power flare, and the symbols carved into the platform beneath them began to glow. The same symbols from the abyss, the same ones that had bound the original covenant. "The first Alpha King made a deal," Miranda continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the clearing. "Sacrifices in exchange for prosperity. But he didn't tell his descendants the full truth. The abyss was looking for something specific, someone with ancient blood, someone who could return the power instead of just feeding it." She gestured to the black veins on her skin. "I am descended from the original keepers, the ones who guarded the abyss before your ancestors twisted it into a weapon. The sacrifices weren't supposed to die. They were supposed to wake up. But you kept choosing humans with no connection to the old blood, so they just dissolved." Robert's face had gone gray. That's impossible. The records were destroyed by the queens who came after, Miranda said, looking directly at Elvira. Because they knew. They all knew. Every queen is told the truth when she takes her vows. Isn't that right, Your Majesty? Elvira said nothing, but her silence was confirmation enough. The crowd erupted in angry shouts. Pack members turned on their leaders, demanding answers. You knew? Someone screamed. You knew they didn't have to die? How many innocents? Another voice cried. How many lives wasted? Elvira lifted her chin, defiant even now. It was necessary to maintain order, to keep the power consolidated. If people knew the truth, they would question everything. They would hold you accountable, Miranda finished. And we couldn't have that, could we? Toby stepped forward, his small body radiating authority that should have been impossible for a child. I'm the heir to this pack. By law, by blood, by right of survival. I challenge your rule, Mother. The gasps from the crowd were audible. A 6-year-old challenging the queen, it was unheard of. But Robert didn't laugh. He looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw what Miranda saw. The boy who had jumped into the abyss. The wolf who had survived. The heir who had returned. Toby, Robert said slowly, you're too young to— I name Miranda Coffey as my regent, Toby continued, ignoring him. Until I reach my majority, she will speak with my voice. She will rule with my authority. This is my decree. Absolutely not, Elvira hissed. Robert, stop this madness. He's been corrupted by the abyss, by this creature. Miranda felt the rage building inside her, hot and sharp. The shadows responded, growing thicker, darker. She was about to speak when Toby's small hand gripped hers. Please, he whispered, looking up at her with those 2 old eyes. I can't do this alone. And just like that, the rage cooled. She looked down at the boy who had saved her life, who had given up 3 years in hell to keep her safe, and she knew she couldn't say no. I accept, Miranda said clearly. The Alpha King closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked a decade older. The estate has a panic room, a vault beneath the mountain. We need to talk, privately, all of us. No more secrets, Miranda said. No more secrets, Robert agreed. He looked at his wife. Elvira, come. The queen's face was a mask of cold fury, but she followed. As they walked toward the estate, Toby's hand still in Miranda's, she felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her back, some fearful, some hopeful, some calculating. The abyss whispered in the back of her mind. Well done, daughter. The pieces are moving into place. Miranda ignored it. She had bigger problems, like the fact that the boy holding her hand had just made her the most powerful person in the pack, and the most hated. Chapter 4. The Bargain. The vault beneath the estate was a room carved from solid obsidian, lined with silver and sealed by magic that made Miranda's skin prickle. Only the royal family could enter, and now, apparently, her. Robert sat heavily in a chair that looked like a throne, suddenly looking every one of his 47 years. Elvira stood by the door, arms crossed, radiating hostility. Toby had shifted back into his wolf form the moment they'd left the crowd, unable or unwilling to maintain his human shape. He sat pressed against Miranda's leg, a warm anchor in the cold room. Show me the contract, Miranda said, breaking the tense silence. Robert gestured to the far wall. Ancient script glowed to life across the obsidian, written in a language that hurt to read. But Miranda could understand it now. The abyss had made sure of that. She read it carefully, her stomach sinking with each line. It's worse than I thought, she muttered. Explain, Robert commanded, then seemed to catch himself. His voice softened. Please. Miranda pointed to a section of text. The original covenant wasn't just about sacrifices. It was about bloodline preservation. The abyss agreed to protect the pack's borders, ensure fertile lands, strong offspring. In exchange, the Alpha King promised to send down anyone who carried the old blood the keeper lineage, so the abyss could reclaim what was stolen from it centuries ago. Stolen? Robert frowned. Power, Miranda said simply. The first keepers were meant to be bridges between the surface world and the deep places. They maintained balance, but some of them got greedy, tried to hoard the power for themselves. The abyss didn't appreciate that. It went to sleep, wounded and angry. The covenant was supposed to wake it gently, feed it the blood it was owed. She turned to face Elvira. But the queens discovered something, didn't they? They discovered that if they sent down people with diluted keeper blood distant descendants who didn't know what they were, those people would die instead of awakening, and their deaths still counted as payment. Elvira's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. It was safer that way, the queen said coldly. A fully awakened keeper could challenge the throne, could upset the balance of power. Better to sacrifice a few humans with questionable bloodlines than risk someone like you. Like me, Miranda agreed. Someone who could actually communicate with the abyss. Who could change the terms of the deal? She stepped closer to Elvira, and Toby growled low in warning at the queen. You knew what I was the moment I started having visions. That's why you pushed for my sacrifice even though I was only 19. You wanted me dead before I could awaken. I wanted my pack safe, Elvira snapped. I wanted my son to inherit a stable kingdom, not one torn apart by ancient powers we can't control. But he jumped, Miranda said softly, and you couldn't stop him. For the first time, genuine emotion cracked through Elvira's mask. Pain, raw and devastating. I tried to catch him. I shifted. I dove after him, but the abyss rejected me, threw me back up. It only wanted its keeper, Miranda finished, and the little king who loved her enough to die for her. Robert stood abruptly. What happens now? The covenant is still active. The abyss is still awake. If we stop the sacrifices, what's to prevent it from turning on us? From swallowing the entire pack? Miranda took a breath. This was the part she'd been dreading. I made a bargain of my own, while I was below. The abyss taught me, trained me, because it wants something. What? Robert demanded. A new covenant. The old one is broken. It was broken the moment Toby jumped and survived. The abyss says the terms need to be renegotiated, and I'm the only one who can do it. Absolutely not, Elvira said immediately. Robert, this is exactly what I warned you about. She'll negotiate terms that benefit herself, that give her power over— She already has power, Robert interrupted quietly. He looked at Miranda with something between respect and fear. My son gave it to her, and whether we like it or not, she's the only one the abyss will talk to. Miranda nodded. I can end the sacrifices, permanently. But the abyss still needs to be fed. Fed what? Robert asked warily. Energy, intent, not lives, but offerings. Things freely given, not taken. Music, art, stories, emotions. The abyss is old and lonely. It doesn't actually want death. It wants connection. The original keepers understood that. She walked to the wall of text and placed her palm against it. The script shifted, rearranging itself. I can rewrite this, make it a partnership instead of a transaction, but there are conditions. Name them, Robert said. First, no more executions disguised as sacrifices. Anyone accused of being marked or cursed gets evaluated by me. If they have keeper blood, I train them. If they don't, they go free. Robert nodded slowly. Agreed. Second, Toby stays with me. I'll protect him, train him, prepare him to rule. But I won't let him be used as a political pawn by either of you. Elvira's face went white with rage. You want to take my son. Your son chose, Miranda said flatly. He hasn't left my side since the abyss. He can't even hold his human form around anyone but me. I'm not taking him. I'm accepting the responsibility you threw away when you decided I was disposable. The silence that followed was deadly. Finally, Robert spoke. "What's the third condition?" Miranda hesitated. This was the dangerous one. "When Toby reaches his majority when he turns 18, the pack will accept whatever decision he makes about me." "What does that mean?" Elvira demanded. "It means," Miranda said carefully, "that the abyss has marked us both. There's a bond forming. I don't fully understand it yet, but Toby called me his when we were below, and the abyss recognized that claim. In 12 years, when he's old enough to understand what that means, he'll have a choice. Keep me as regent, send me away, or—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Robert understood. His eyes widened. "The abyss thinks he'll choose you as his mate." "I don't know what he'll choose," Miranda said honestly. "He's 6 years old. Right now, he just sees me as someone who kept him safe. But yes, the abyss believes. It believes we're meant to rule together. Eventually." Elvira looked like she might be sick. "This is insane. He's a child. You can't possibly—" "I'm not doing anything," Miranda snapped. "I'm telling you what the abyss showed me. A prophecy. A possibility. Nothing is certain. But if you try to separate us now, if you try to break the bond before it's had time to develop naturally, the abyss will consider it a violation of the new covenant. And I won't be able to stop what happens next." Toby chose that moment to shift. The transformation was easier this time, less painful. The boy stood naked and shivering, but he walked directly to Miranda and took her hand. "She's mine," he said simply, looking at his parents with absolute certainty. "I jumped for her. I hunted for her. I kept her alive. She's mine. And when I'm big enough, I'm going to marry her and make her my queen. The abyss told me so." The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Robert closed his eyes. "Toby, do you accept the conditions?" Miranda interrupted. She needed an answer before this dissolved into a family argument she had no desire to witness. The Alpha King looked at his wife. Elvira's face was a mask of barely controlled fury, but beneath it, Miranda could see fear. Fear of losing her son, fear of losing control, fear of the future. "We need time," Robert said finally, "to process this, to consult the elders." "You have until sunrise," Miranda said. "After that, I'm rewriting the covenant with or without your approval. The abyss is getting impatient." She turned to leave, Toby's hand still in hers. "Miranda," Robert called out. She paused. "Did it hurt?" he asked quietly. "The fall, the abyss, all of it." Miranda looked back at him, and for a moment, she let him see the truth in her eyes. The terror, the pain, the loneliness, the 3 months that had felt like 3 years, trapped in darkness with only a traumatized child for company. "Every second," she said. "But I survived. We both did. That's more than you gave us a chance to do." She left the vault, Toby padding silently beside her in wolf form once more. As they walked through the estate's corridors, pack members pressed themselves against the walls, staring with wide eyes. Some whispered prayers. Some looked at her with hope, others with undisguised hatred. Miranda ignored them all. They reached the room that had been prepared for her, a guest suite in the east wing, far from the royal family's quarters. Someone had left clothes on the bed, simple dresses, boots, a warm cloak. Toby immediately jumped onto the bed and curled up, watching her with golden eyes. Miranda sat beside him, running her fingers through his fur. "You didn't have to say that. About marrying me. You're too young to understand what that means." The wolf's tail thumped once against the mattress. "The abyss put the idea in your head," Miranda continued. "It wants us bound together, because it makes the new covenant stronger. But Toby, you have to understand when you're older, when you can think clearly, you might not want this. You might not want me." Toby shifted, the transformation quick and effortless now that they were alone. He sat cross-legged on the bed, looking at her with those impossibly ancient eyes. "I jumped," he said simply. I chose. The abyss didn't make me. I saw them hurting you, and I chose. You were 6. I'm still 6, Toby interrupted. And I still choose you, every day, every night. When I'm 7, I'll choose you. When I'm 8, when I'm 18, I'll always choose you, Miranda. Because you're the only one who sees me. His small hand reached up to touch the black veins on her neck. You're marked like me now. We match. We fit. The abyss just showed me what I already knew. Miranda felt tears prick her eyes. What if I hurt you? What if I become like them, like the queens who lied and sacrificed innocence to keep their power? You won't, Toby said with absolute certainty. Because you jumped too. You could have stayed safe in your human life. But you followed me down. That's what the abyss won't tell you. The voice said you were unconscious for 3 months, but you weren't. Not the whole time. Miranda froze. What? You woke up on the 2nd day, Toby said softly. You saw how broken I was, how I couldn't shift back, couldn't speak. The abyss offered you a choice. Heal yourself and climb out alone, or stay and help me. You chose to stay. You chose me. So we're the same, Miranda. We both jumped. The tears fell then, hot and fast. Miranda pulled the boy into her arms, holding him tight while he wrapped his small arms around her neck. Outside, the sun began to rise. And in the vault below, Alpha King Robert placed his hand on the obsidian wall and spoke the words that would change everything. I accept her terms. Rewrite the Covenant. Chapter 5. The Vow. The rewriting of the Covenant took 3 days and nearly killed Miranda. She stood in the center of the abyss platform at Salvation Point, surrounded by a circle of candles that burned with black flames. The entire pack had gathered to witness, forced by Robert's decree. They needed to see that the old ways were ending. Miranda's eyes glowed pure silver as she chanted in the language of the deep places, her voice overlapping with the voice of the abyss itself. The ancient script carved into the platform burned away, replaced by new words that wrote themselves in liquid shadow. Blood dripped from her nose, her ears, the corners of her eyes. The power required to rewrite a 300-year-old covenant was immense, far beyond what her 19-year-old body should have been able to handle. But Toby stood beside her, his small hand gripping hers, feeding her his strength. His royal blood, mixed with hers from the fall, created a conduit. They were writing this together. When it was finally done, Miranda collapsed. She woke 2 days later in the medical wing, her body wrapped in bandages where the power had burned through her skin. Toby was curled up in wolf form at the foot of her bed, refusing to leave despite the healer's protests. The new covenant was simple. The abyss shall protect the Crimson Fang Pack in exchange for freely given offerings of art, music, story, and joy. No blood shall be spilled in Covenant's name. The Keeper and the Heir shall serve as bridges between deep and surface, speaking with authority of both realms. Should either fail in their duty, the Covenant dissolves and all parties return to neutrality. No more sacrifices, no more lies, just partnership. The pack was divided in their reactions. The younger wolves celebrated. The elders grumbled but couldn't argue with results. The lands were still fertile, the borders still strong, and no one had to die. But Elvira's faction, the traditionalists who'd built their power on the old covenant, were furious. Miranda was sitting in the estate's library 3 weeks later, teaching Toby to read, when the attack came. The window exploded inward. Miranda threw herself over Toby as glass rained down. She rolled, coming up with shadows already coiling around her fists. 3 wolves burst through the window enforcers, their eyes wild with desperation. Behind them came Elder Wayne, still in human form, holding a silver dagger inscribed with binding runes. The abomination must die, Wayne hissed. You've poisoned the covenant, corrupted the air. We're taking back our pack. Toby shifted, his transformation violent and angry. He put himself between Miranda and the attackers, snarling with a ferocity that made the enforcers hesitate. "Stand down," Miranda commanded, her voice echoing with abyss power. "This is treason." "This is survival," Wayne spat. He gestured to the enforcers. "The Queen supports us. She knows what must be done." Miranda's heart sank. Elvira had made her move. The enforcers lunged. Toby met the first one in midair, his jaws clamping around the wolf's throat, not killing, but holding. Warning. The second enforcer tried to circle around, but Miranda's shadows grabbed it, slamming it against the wall. The third went for Toby's exposed flank. Miranda screamed, throwing out her hand. A spear of pure shadow materialized and drove through the attacking wolf's shoulder, pinning it to the floor. The beast howled in pain but couldn't move. Wayne charged with his dagger raised. Miranda caught his wrist, her grip enhanced by abyss strength. The dagger clattered to the floor. She could have killed him, should have killed him for attacking the air, but she hesitated. That hesitation nearly cost her everything. Wayne twisted, pulling a second blade from his belt, a normal knife, nothing magical about it. He drove it toward her stomach. Toby released the enforcer he'd been holding and leaped. His jaws closed around Wayne's arm, and the sickening crack of breaking bone echoed through the library. Wayne's scream brought guards running. By the time Robert arrived, it was over. The three enforcers were restrained, whimpering. Wayne was unconscious from blood loss and pain, and Toby stood in front of Miranda in his human form, naked and blood-splattered, his small chest heaving. "They tried to kill her," Toby said, his voice shaking with rage and fear. "Your enforcers, your elder, they tried to kill Miranda." Robert's face went gray. He looked at the scene, at the blood, at his 6-year-old son standing like a warrior over a battlefield. "Where is the Queen?" Robert asked quietly. No one answered. They found Elvira in her chambers, calmly packing a bag. She didn't resist when Robert entered with his personal guard. She simply looked at him with cold, resigned eyes. "You were going to let them kill her," Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was going to save our son," Elvira corrected. "That creature has him under some kind of spell. Can't you see it? He can barely hold his human form. He follows her like a lost puppy. She's using him, Robert. Using his blood to cement her power. She saved his life. She corrupted him." Elvira's composure finally cracked. He was supposed to be perfect. Strong. The greatest alpha king our line had ever produced. Instead, he's bound to some abyss-touched human who'll never be able to give him proper heirs. He's 6 years old, Robert roared, his wolf rising to the surface. He jumped into the abyss to save someone he cared about. That's not corruption. That's humanity. Something you apparently lost a long time ago. Elvira laughed bitterly. Humanity. Is that what we're calling it now? That boy made a blood vow to her, Robert. While you were negotiating with the elders, while I was trying to salvage this disaster, your son cut his palm in hers and swore himself to her in the old way. He's bound to her, at 6 years old. And you think that's normal? Robert's face went pale. What? Miranda appeared in the doorway, Toby clinging to her hand. She was still covered in blood and glass cuts, but her eyes were steady. It's true, she said quietly. He asked me to do the binding ritual. I tried to talk him out of it, but he insisted. Show me, Robert commanded. Toby held up his right palm. A silver scar ran across it, glowing faintly with abyss light. Miranda held up hers, an identical mark. When I'm Alpha King, Toby said clearly, Miranda will be my queen. I've sworn it to the abyss. I've sworn it to her. I've sworn it to myself. No one can break that. Not you, not Mother, no one. The silence in the room was absolute. Finally, Robert spoke, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Elvira, you have a choice. Exile or the cells. The queen lifted her chin. I won't stay, and watch him destroy everything we built. Then you're exiled, Robert said. You have until sunrise to be beyond our borders. If you ever return, you'll be tried for conspiracy to commit murder against the heir's chosen regent." Elvira looked at her son one last time. Toby stared back, unmoved. "You'll regret this," she told him. "When you're older, when you understand what she's stolen from you, you'll regret it." "I'll regret that you never loved me enough to jump," Toby said simply. Elvira flinched as if struck. Without another word, she finished packing and left. Miranda watched her go, feeling no triumph, only sadness for the boy whose mother had just walked away. When they were alone, Robert having left to deal with the aftermath, Miranda knelt beside Toby. "You didn't have to do the blood vow," she said softly. "You could have waited, made sure it was really what you wanted." Toby touched the scar on his palm, then reached up to touch her face. "I'm 6. I know I'm 6. I know I'm supposed to like toys and games and being a kid, but I'm also this." He gestured to himself, to the blood still staining his skin. "I killed to protect you. I broke a man's arm. I'm not normal, Miranda. The abyss changed me, changed both of us." "I know," Miranda whispered. "So I made sure," Toby continued, "made sure that no matter what happens, no matter who tries to take you away, or hurt you or make you leave, you can't. The vow binds us. You're stuck with me." He smiled then, a small, sad smile that was far too old for his face. "Besides, the abyss told me something. When we were down there, it said time moves differently for people like us. It said I might look 6, but my soul is older. It remembers things from before I was born, from before you were born, from when we were supposed to meet the first time." "The first time?" Miranda frowned. "We've done this before," Toby said. "The Keeper and the King. Different names, different faces, but always the same. Always jumping for each other. Always choosing each other when the world says we shouldn't. The abyss showed me. That's why I'm not afraid. Because somewhere deep down, I remember you." Miranda felt tears on her cheeks. "That's not fair. You shouldn't have to remember things like that. You should get to be a child." "I'll be a child," Toby promised. "I'll play and learn and grow, but I'll do it knowing you're mine and I'm yours. That's what makes it safe to be a kid. Because you'll protect me while I figure out how to protect you back." He wrapped his arms around her neck, and Miranda held him, this impossible boy who'd given up everything for her. Outside, the sun was setting, and deep beneath the earth, the abyss whispered its approval. "The vow is sealed. The bond is forged. Now we wait for the boy to become a man. Then, little daughter, then the real payment begins." If a 6-year-old can jump into hell for love, you can hit subscribe. Don't be the person who walks away when it costs you nothing to stay. Chapter 6, The Time Jump. 8 years later, Miranda sat at the edge of the border territories, her boots dangling over a cliff that overlooked the valley below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. She was 27 now, though she looked barely older than the day she'd climbed out of the abyss. The marks kept her young, preserved her, as if time itself was afraid to touch her. She'd kept her promise. She'd stayed away. After the assassination attempt, after Elvira's exile, Miranda had served as Toby's regent for 2 years. She'd taught him politics, combat, the delicate balance of ruling with both strength and mercy. She'd watched him grow from 6 to 8, his body finally aging normally now that they were above ground. But the whispers had grown louder, the looks more accusing, the abyss-touched woman, and the boy king. It was inappropriate, unnatural. The blood vow didn't matter, people saw what they wanted to see, and what they saw was corruption. So on Toby's 8th birthday, Miranda had made a choice. She'd left. Not permanently, she'd told herself, just until he was older, until the age gap didn't seem so vast, until people could accept what the abyss had decreed without seeing a child being manipulated. Robert had tried to stop her. Toby had begged her not to go. But Miranda had walked away anyway, settling in the border territories where she could still watch over the pack from a distance. She'd built a small cabin, used her abyss powers to help travelers and heal the sick. She'd become a legend, the abyss witch who could cure curses and see the future. And every night, she dreamed of golden eyes and a small voice saying, "You're mine." She told herself it was better this way. Safer. That Toby would forget her eventually, find someone appropriate when he came of age. She'd lied to herself for 8 years. The sound of branches snapping made her turn. A massive black wolf emerged from the tree line. It was the size of a horse, with fur that seemed to absorb the dying light. Its eyes were molten gold, ancient and furious. Miranda's heart stopped. The wolf shifted, and where the beast had been, a man now stood. Toby no, Cale now. He'd chosen his true name on his 14th birthday had grown into something devastating. He stood well over 6 feet tall, his body carved from lean muscle and covered in scars from the countless battles he'd fought to secure his throne. His hair was long and dark, tied back from a face that was all sharp angles and predatory beauty. At 18, he looked like a god of war, but his eyes were the same. Golden and fierce and looking at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. 8 years, Cale said, his voice deeper than she remembered, rough with an emotion she couldn't name. 8 years, Miranda. Did you think I wouldn't find you? Miranda stood slowly, her heart hammering. You're supposed to be at the coronation ceremony, Robert said. I don't care what my father said, Cale interrupted. He started walking toward her, slow and deliberate, like a predator stalking prey. The moment they placed the crown on my head, the moment I became Alpha King in truth, I had one priority: you. Cale, you can't just… I sent out a decree, he continued, still advancing. My first official act as king. Find Miranda Coffey. Bring her home. By force if necessary. Miranda took a step back. Her heel found air the cliff edge. I left for a reason. You left because you're a coward, Cale said bluntly. You made a vow. You promised to stay by my side, and you broke it. You were 8, Miranda protested. I couldn't stay. People were talking, saying horrible things. I was protecting you. Protecting me? Cale laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. You disappeared in the middle of the night. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Do you know what that did to me? I searched for you for months, years. I sent scouts to every territory, every human city. I thought you were dead. I sent letters, Miranda said weakly. Once a year, on my birthday. Barely a page, saying you were fine and I should focus on being king. Cale was close now, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. That's not protection, Miranda. That's abandonment. The word hit like a physical blow. Miranda felt tears prick her eyes. I thought if I stayed away, you'd be free. You'd find someone appropriate. Someone who could give you proper heirs. Someone the pack would accept. I don't want appropriate, Cale growled. His hand shot out, gripping her chin, forcing her to look at him. I want you. I've wanted you since I was 6 years old. That hasn't changed. It will never change. Miranda's breath hitched. This close, she could see the silver scar on his palm, the blood vow, still glowing faintly. Her own palm tingled in response. You're 18, she whispered. You don't know what you want, don't I? Cale's thumb brushed across her lower lip, and Miranda felt electricity shoot through her entire body. I've spent 12 years knowing exactly what I want. I've fought wars for you, rebuilt the pack for you, turned down every marriage proposal, every political alliance that required me to choose someone else. I told them all the same thing. I already have a queen. The pack will never accept. The pack will accept whatever I tell them to accept, Cale said flatly. I'm not asking for permission, Miranda. I'm not asking at all. Before she could respond, he moved. His mouth crashed against hers, and Miranda's world tilted. The kiss was fierce, desperate, tasting of 8 years of longing and frustration. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her against him, and she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but feel. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Cale rested his forehead against hers. "I'm not a child anymore," he said roughly. "I'm a man, I'm a king, and I'm claiming what's mine." Before Miranda could process what he meant, she felt a sharp pain in her shoulder. Cale had bitten her. Not hard enough to break skin, but enough to leave a mark. Enough to activate the mate bond that had been dormant between them for years. Power exploded through her body. The bond snapped into place, electric and undeniable, linking her to him in a way that went beyond the blood vow. She could feel his heartbeat, his emotions, his absolute certainty. "What did you do?" Miranda gasped, touching her shoulder where his teeth had pressed. "I marked you," Cale said unapologetically. "Now you can't run. The bond will pull you back to me no matter how far you go. You're mine, Miranda. You've always been mine. I'm just making it official." Miranda should have been furious. She should have pushed him away, told him he had no right to make that choice for her. But the bond sang in her veins, and deep down, in the part of her that had jumped into the abyss without hesitation, she felt relief. "You're insane," she said, but there was no heat in it. "I jumped into hell for you when I was 6, Cale reminded her, his lips curving into a smile that was equal parts dangerous and beautiful. "What did you expect?" A howl split the night, a signal from the pack lands. Cale's head snapped up, his expression shifting from possessive lover to warrior king in an instant. "What is that?" Miranda asked. "Trouble," Cale said grimly. He looked back at her, his gold eyes serious. "The traditionalists. They've been quiet since my coronation, but I knew they'd make a move eventually. They want to challenge the new covenant, restore the old ways." "How many?" "Enough to be a problem." Cale's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers. "Come with me. Fight with me. Show them that the Abyss Witch and the Alpha King are a united force." Miranda looked at their joined hands, at the matching scars on their palms, at the man who'd grown from the boy who'd jumped for her. The Abyss whispered in the back of her mind, "The time has come, daughter. The real payment begins now." "What does the Abyss want?" Miranda asked Cale. "It's been quiet for years, but I can feel it stirring. Something's coming." Cale's expression darkened. "I've been having dreams. The Abyss speaks to me now, too. It says the traditionalists aren't working alone. They've made contact with something in the deep places. Something that wants the old covenant restored." "What kind of something?" "The kind that feeds on death," Cale said. "The kind that's been starving since you rewrote the covenant. The kind that's promised the traditionalists power if they can overthrow us and bring back the sacrifices." Miranda's blood ran cold. "An abyss entity." But the voice said, "The voice isn't the only thing that lives down there," Cale interrupted. "There are older things, hungrier things, and they're not happy about our new arrangement." Another howl, closer this time, urgent. Cale squeezed her hand. "So what's it going to be, Miranda? Run again? Or stand with me?" Miranda looked at him, really looked at him. The boy who'd jumped, the king who'd searched, the man who'd marked her without permission but with absolute certainty. She called on her power, letting the black veins ignite with silver light. Shadows coiled around her like living armor. "Let's go kill some traditionalists," she said. Cale's smile was fierce and proud. "That's my queen." They ran together toward the packlands, the bond between them singing with power. Behind them, the cliff where Miranda had sat in self-imposed exile crumbled and fell into the valley below. There was no going back now. Chapter 7. The Claim. They reached the packlands to find chaos. The main estate was under siege. Wolves in both forms battled across the grounds, the night air filled with snarls and screams. Miranda could see the division clearly. Cale's loyalists wore blue armbands, the traditionalists wore red, but it was what stood in the center of the courtyard that made Miranda's blood freeze. A rift, a tear in reality itself, pulsing with the sickly green light of corrupted abyss energy, and crawling out of it were creatures that should never have been allowed to surface. Shadow beasts with too many limbs and mouths that screamed in languages that hurt to hear. They opened a doorway, Miranda breathed. Those idiots opened a doorway to the deep corruption. Can you close it? Cale asked, already shifting partially, his canines elongating. Not while it's being held open from both sides. Miranda's eyes tracked to a group of robed figures standing around the rift, chanting. Elder Wayne was among them, his arm still twisted from where Toby had broken it years ago. We need to break their circle. Leave that to me, Cale said. He turned to the wolves gathered behind them, his personal guard, 30 of the pack's strongest warriors. Kill anything that comes through that rift. Protect the civilians. Do not let those creatures reach the residential quarter. Yes, Alpha King, they chorused. Cale looked at Miranda, and for a moment, his warrior's mask slipped. She saw the fear underneath, not for himself, but for her. Stay close to me. I'm not the one who needs protecting, Miranda said, letting her power flare. The shadows around her solidified into blades, whips, shields. I've been fighting abyss creatures since I was 19. You're the one who's been playing politics. Despite everything, Cale laughed. I've missed you. Then they charged. Cale hit the battlefield like a force of nature. He didn't fully shift instead. He fought in his war form, a terrible hybrid of man and wolf that could wield weapons while maintaining a beast's strength and speed. His claws tore through traditionalist wolves like paper. Miranda fought beside him, her shadow blades singing through the air. She cut down the abyss creatures with precision, knowing exactly where to strike to send them back to the deep places. The bond between her and Cale thrummed with energy. She could feel his position without looking, anticipate his movements, cover his blind spots. They moved like they'd been fighting together for years instead of reuniting mere hours ago. But the rift kept pulsing, and more creatures kept coming. We need to reach the chanters, Miranda shouted over the din. Working on it. Cale decapitated a shadow beast and kicked its dissolving corpse into 2 approaching wolves. They've got a barrier up, some kind of blood magic. Miranda's eyes narrowed. She could see it now, a shimmering dome of red energy protecting the ritual circle. Traditional wolf magic, mixed with something fouler, something that reeked of old abyss corruption. They're using the old covenant, she realized. They still have fragments of it. That's how they're powering the barrier. Can you break it? Maybe, but I'll need time. Then I'll buy you some. Cale's voice dropped to a growl. Robert! Silas! To me! Alpha King Robert emerged from the melee, blood splattered but alive. Beside him was Silas, the graying beta who'd served the pack for decades. Both looked exhausted, but determined. My king, Robert said, the title still strange on his tongue when addressing his son. Form a perimeter around Miranda, Cale commanded. Nothing gets through. Understood? Understood, Robert said. He looked at Miranda, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps even an apology for all the years of pain. Do what you need to do, Keeper. Miranda nodded and closed her eyes, reaching deep into the abyss. Voice, she called. I need you. The response came immediately, amused and dark. Little daughter, you finally ask for help. What will you offer in payment? What do you want? The same thing I have always wanted. Balance. The corruption spreading from this rift threatens that balance. Close it, and I will consider your debt adjusted. Miranda didn't have time to negotiate. Deal. Power flooded through her, so much that her body lit up like a star. The black veins on her skin blazed silver white. She raised her hands toward the barrier, and her shadows transformed into something else, pure abyss energy, the kind that existed before corruption, before hunger, before the covenant. The barrier shattered like glass. Now, Cale roared. His warriors surged forward, crashing into the exposed chanters. Wayne tried to run, but Robert was faster. The former Alpha King tackled the elder, his jaws closing around the old man's throat, not killing, but holding. The chanting broke. The rift began to collapse, but the creatures already through weren't dissolving. They were staying, feeding on the residual corruption energy. And then Miranda felt a presence emerging from the rift. Something massive, something ancient, something that made even the voice fall silent in her mind. "Kale," Miranda whispered. "We need to run, now." But it was too late. A hand, if it could be called a hand, emerged from the rift. It was the size of a house, made of shadow and bone and faces that screamed silently. The creature it belonged to hauled itself through, and Miranda understood with horrible clarity what the traditionalists had done. They'd summoned a devourer, one of the original entities that the first keepers had sealed away because they consumed everything: light, life, hope, reality itself. "Fall back," Kale ordered, his voice cutting through the paralysis of fear that had gripped the battlefield. "Everyone fall back to the inner walls." But the devourer moved faster. Its massive hand swept across the courtyard, and wolves, both loyalists and traditionalists, simply vanished, absorbed into the creature's body, their screams cut off instantly, as if they'd never existed. Miranda felt the abyss inside her recoil in horror. Even it feared this thing. "Miranda, run!" Kale grabbed her arm, trying to pull her away, but she planted her feet, staring at the devourer with a terrible understanding dawning. "I can't. It's here for me." "What?" "The debt the voice mentioned. This is the payment." Miranda looked at Kale, memorizing his face. "The abyss let us live, let us change the covenant, because it knew this day would come. The devourer was always going to break free, and it needs a keeper to seal it again." "No," Kale said flatly. "Absolutely not. We'll find another way." "There is no other way." Miranda cupped his face with both hands. "If I don't do this, it will consume everything. The pack, the territories, eventually, the entire world. One life for thousands, Kale. It's simple mathematics." She was quoting his mother. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "You don't get to decide this alone," Kale snarled, his eyes blazing gold. "You're mine. I marked you. I claimed you. You don't get to sacrifice yourself without my permission." "I'm not asking for permission," Miranda said gently. She kissed him, soft and sweet and final. "I'm doing what I've always done. I'm jumping." She pulled away from him and walked toward the devourer. "Miranda!" Kale's roar shook the earth. He tried to follow, but Robert and Silas grabbed him, holding him back even as he fought them with inhuman strength. Miranda stopped in front of the devourer. This close, she could see the faces trapped in its body, all the victims it had consumed over millennia. Some were still screaming. "I'm a keeper," she said, her voice steady. "By blood and by right, I claim authority over you. I offer myself as the seal. Take me, and return to the deep places where you belong." The devourer paused. Then it laughed, a sound like reality cracking. "A keeper offers herself. How delicious, how noble, how insufficient." Miranda's confidence faltered. "What?" "One keeper might seal me for a century, perhaps two, but I will always break free, unless—" The creature's attention shifted to Kale, who was still struggling against his captors. "Unless you offer me something truly valuable, a bonded pair, keeper and king. Together, you could seal me forever, apart. You merely delay the inevitable." "No," Miranda said immediately. "Take me. Leave him. Then I take neither, and I feast on this world until nothing remains." Miranda's mind raced. She could feel Kale through the bond, feel his absolute refusal to let her do this alone. But if they both went into the abyss, if they both became the seal, the pack would be leaderless, the covenant would collapse, everything they'd built would fall apart. "Unless, there's a third option," Miranda said slowly. "We don't seal you, We bind you, make you part of the covenant. You get to feed on offerings like the abyss does, art, music, story, but nothing living, nothing that doesn't consent. The devourer seemed to consider this, and if I refuse, then Kale and I merge with the abyss itself, Miranda said, the plan crystallizing as she spoke. We become the deep places. We transform you from the inside out. It will destroy us, but it will destroy you too. Mutually assured destruction. You're bluffing. Try me, Miranda said, and meant it. The silence stretched. Then, your terms are acceptable, but the binding requires a sacrifice, not of life, but of humanity. You must become fully of the abyss, both of you. You will be immortal, unchanging, neither fully alive nor dead. Do you accept? Miranda looked back at Kale. He'd stopped struggling. He was staring at her, and through the bond, she felt his understanding, his acceptance. He'd jumped into the abyss for her when he was 6. He'd jump again now, at 18. She nodded to him. Kale broke free from Robert and Silas and ran to her. He took her hand, and together they faced the devourer. We accept, they said in unison. The devourer lunged forward, its massive jaws opening to consume them. But instead of destruction, there was transformation. Miranda felt her humanity burning away, replaced by something vast and terrible and beautiful. She felt Kale beside her, going through the same metamorphosis. Their bodies dissolved into shadow and light, merging with the abyss, with the devourer, with everything. For a moment, they were gods. Then they were themselves again, but changed. They stood in the courtyard, hand in hand. Their eyes glowed with the same silver-gold light. Black veins covered both their bodies, pulsing with power. And behind them, the devourer was shrinking, compressing, being drawn into a new form. A crown. It settled onto Kale's head, black metal twisted with living shadow, set with gems that held the faces of the devourer's victims, now freed from torment and resting peacefully. A matching circlet appeared on Miranda's brow. The rift sealed, the corrupted creatures dissolved, and the courtyard fell silent. Robert stepped forward slowly, staring at his son. Kale? Kale looked at his father, and when he spoke, his voice echoed with the depth of the abyss itself. The devourer is bound. The covenant is renewed. And we. He looked at Miranda. We are no longer entirely mortal. Miranda squeezed his hand. But we're together. Always, Kale agreed. The pack slowly emerged from hiding, staring at their transformed king and his keeper queen with a mixture of awe and fear. This was what Miranda had feared all along, that they would become something people couldn't accept, something too other, too powerful, too different. But as she looked at the faces in the crowd, she didn't see rejection. She saw hope. Chapter 8. The Price. The aftermath of the battle was brutal. 23 wolves dead, 47 injured. The main courtyard was a crater, the ground scorched black where the rift had burned reality itself. And the traditionalists who'd survived the devourer's rampage were locked in the cells beneath the estate, awaiting judgment. Miranda stood in what remained of the throne room, watching the reconstruction efforts through the shattered windows. 3 days had passed since the transformation, and she still didn't feel entirely real. Her body existed, solid and present, but sometimes she could feel herself slipping, becoming shadow, becoming void, becoming elsewhere. The circlet on her brow pulsed with a slow heartbeat that wasn't hers. You need to eat, Kale said from behind her. Miranda turned. He looked as exhausted as she felt, though on him it manifested differently. His eyes burned brighter, and shadows clung to him like a second skin. The crown, the devourer, bound and transformed, sat heavy on his head. I'm not hungry, Miranda said. It was true. She hadn't felt hunger since the transformation, hadn't felt thirst, hadn't felt the need to sleep, though exhaustion pulled at her constantly. You're fading, Kale said bluntly. He crossed the room and took her hand. His touch was warm, anchoring. I can feel it through the bond. You're spending too much time in the abyss space, not enough time here. Miranda looked down at their joined hands. Her skin flickered solid, then translucent, then solid again. I don't know how to stop it. The abyss keeps pulling at me. It wants me to sink down, to become part of it completely. Then we sink together, Kale said. But not yet. We have unfinished business here first. He was right. The trials were scheduled to begin today. The traditionalists, led by Wayne, would face judgment for opening the rift and unleashing the devourer. Robert had wanted to execute them immediately, but Kale had refused. They deserve to be heard, he'd said. Even traitors get a trial. Miranda wasn't so merciful. She'd seen the faces of the wolves who'd been consumed by the devourer. She'd felt their terror before they'd vanished. Some of them had been children. What will you do? She asked Kale. With Wayne and the others? That depends, Kale said carefully, on what they tell us. The voice confirmed that the traditionalists didn't summon the devourer alone. Someone taught them the ritual. Someone who knew the old magic. Miranda's stomach dropped. Elvira. Kale's expression darkened. We don't know that for certain. Who else would have the knowledge? Who else would have the motivation? Miranda pulled away from him, pacing. Your mother has been in exile for 8 years. 8 years of festering resentment, watching her son rule alongside the woman she tried to have killed. Of course she'd reach out to the traditionalists. Of course she'd promise them power if they destroyed us. If that's true, Kale said quietly, then she's committed an act of war against her own pack. The sentence is death. Miranda heard the pain beneath his words. Despite everything Elvira had done, she was still his mother. The woman who'd carried him, birthed him, raised him for 6 years before everything went wrong. I'm sorry, Miranda said. Don't be. Kale's jaw tightened. She made her choices. I've made mine. Let's go hear what the traitors have to say. The trials were held in the underground arena, a circular stone chamber that could hold the entire pack. Every seat was filled. Everyone wanted to see justice served. Wayne and 12 other traditionalists knelt in chains at the center of the arena. They looked haggard, broken. Several were missing limbs from the battle. Wayne himself had lost an eye, the socket covered with a dirty bandage. Kale sat on a temporary throne, the devourer crown casting strange shadows across his face. Miranda stood at his right hand, the circlet glowing softly on her brow. Robert served as prosecutor, Silas as defender, a role he'd accepted reluctantly, but someone had to speak for the accused. Elder Wayne Norris. Robert's voice boomed through the arena. You are charged with treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and endangering the pack through forbidden magic. How do you plead? Wayne raised his head, his remaining eye fixed on Miranda with pure hatred. Guilty, and I'd do it again. A murmur ran through the crowd. You admit to opening a rift to the corrupted abyss? Robert continued. I admit to trying to restore the natural order, Wayne spat. Before that creature poisoned our covenant. Before she turned our king into an abomination. Kale's hand tightened on the arm of his throne, but he said nothing. Who taught you the ritual? Robert demanded. The magic required to open such a rift was lost centuries ago. Someone gave you the knowledge. Who? Wayne smiled, showing bloody teeth. Does it matter? The deed is done. We failed, but others will try. You can't stop what's coming, boy king. The old ways will return, and when they do, your little human pet will burn. Miranda felt rage building in her chest, hot and familiar. The abyss responded, shadows writhing at her feet. Answer the question, Kale said, his voice dropping to a dangerous purr. Or I'll have the keeper pull the information from your mind. And trust me, you don't want that. Wayne's smile faltered. He looked at Miranda, and she let her eyes flare silver. Let him see what she'd become. Let him understand that she wasn't the frightened girl he'd tried to throw into the abyss all those years ago. She's in the Shadowfen marshes, Wayne said finally. Your whore of a mother. She's been there for 3 years, gathering followers, building an army. She promised us power, promised us the return of the old covenant. All we had to do was kill the abyss-touched bitch and break your bond. The arena erupted in chaos. Kale stood slowly, the movement predatory. You're lying. My mother was exiled to the Eastern Territories. We have scouts watching her. You have scouts watching a decoy, Wayne laughed. An old woman Elvira paid to wear her face. Your real mother has been in the Shadowfen for years, and she's not alone. She's allied with the Broken Moon Pack, the Crimson Ridge refugees, and something else. Something from the deep places that even the abyss fears. Miranda's blood ran cold. What do you mean, something the abyss fears? Wayne looked directly at her. There are things older than the abyss, girl. Things that existed before the world took shape. Your precious voice isn't the only power in the deep places. And Elvira found one that's been sleeping since the first age. She woke it up, fed it, made a deal with it. What kind of deal? Kale demanded. Your life for its freedom, Wayne said simply. Kill the Alpha King, break the new covenant, and it gets to rise. Gets to remake the world in its image. And Elvira gets to rule what's left. Silence fell over the arena like a shroud. Miranda felt the voice stirring in her mind, agitated in a way she'd never felt before. He speaks truth, the voice said. There is a stirring in the deepest places. Something ancient wakes. Something I cannot touch. What is it? Miranda whispered. The first hunger. The void before creation. If it rises, not even I can stop it. Only a keeper of pure bloodline, bonded to a king of true power, stands a chance. And even then what? Miranda pressed. Even then, the price may be more than you're willing to pay. Kale was still staring at Wayne. Where in the Shadowfen? Exactly where? The Drowned Temple, Wayne said. 3 days' journey south, but you won't make it. Elvira knows you'll come. She's been waiting for this, hoping for it. She wants you to come, boy. She wants to watch you die. Kale looked at Miranda. Through the bond, she felt his question. What do we do? Miranda straightened. We go. We end this. And we bring your mother home in chains, or in a box. I don't care which. It's a trap, Robert said, stepping forward. Kale, you can't seriously be considering this. She's my mother, Kale said quietly. And she's threatening my pack. I don't have a choice. Then take an army, Robert urged. Don't go alone. We won't be alone, Miranda said. She looked at Kale, and understanding passed between them. We'll have the abyss. Kale stood. Sentence the traitors to the cells. Life imprisonment, no parole. They don't get the mercy of death, they get to live, knowing they failed. My king, Silas started. The sentence is passed, Kale said firmly. He removed the devourer crown and held it, feeling its weight. Robert, you'll serve as regent while we're gone. If we don't return in 7 days, the crown passes to you. Choose a new heir. Rebuild. Kale, don't talk like that, Robert said, his voice breaking. But Kale was already walking toward the exit, Miranda at his side. They had 3 days to reach the Shadowfen marshes. 3 days to prepare for a battle with something older than the abyss itself. 3 days before they faced the woman who'd birthed Kale and tried to destroy Miranda. As they left the arena, Miranda felt the abyss whisper one final warning. The first hunger demands a sacrifice, little daughter. Not of life, but of everything that makes you mortal. If you face it, you will have to choose. Save the world, or save yourselves. You cannot do both. Miranda looked at Kale, at the man who'd jumped into hell for her twice already. We'll find a way, she said, more to herself than the voice. We always do. But even as she said it, she felt the cold certainty settling in her bones. This time, jumping wouldn't be enough. This time, one of them wouldn't come back. Miranda and Kale are about to face the thing even the abyss fears. If you want to see if love survives this, subscribe, because some endings are too important to miss. Chapter 9. The Descent. The Shadowfen marshes stank of death and decay. Miranda and Kale had been traveling for 2.5 days, moving faster than any normal wolves could manage. Their transformation had given them abilities beyond mortal limits. They could run without tiring, see in perfect darkness, and sense dangers before they manifested. But it wasn't enough to shake the feeling of dread that grew heavier with each mile. The marshes were a twisted landscape of black water and gnarled trees that seemed to reach for them with skeletal branches. Mist clung to everything, thick and oily, smelling of sulfur and something worse, the scent of reality rotting from the inside out. "The first hunger is already leaking through," Miranda said, kneeling beside a pool of water. The surface was perfectly still, but beneath it, she could see shapes moving. Wrong shapes, with geometries that hurt to perceive. "It's corrupting the land, preparing it for its arrival." Kale crouched beside her, his hand resting on the hilt of a sword forged from abyss metal, the only weapon that could hurt something as ancient as what they were hunting. "How long do we have?" "Hours," Miranda said grimly. "Maybe less. The ritual to fully summon it takes time, but Elvira's been working on this for years. She might be in the final stages already." Through the bond, she felt Kale's conflict. His mother was about to unleash an apocalypse, and part of him, the small part that was still the 6-year-old boy who remembered her reading him stories, desperately wanted to believe there was some mistake, some explanation that would make this make sense. Miranda took his hand. "I'm sorry it has to be this way." "She chose this," Kale said, but his voice was rough. "She chose hatred over her own son. That's on her, not me." They stood and continued deeper into the marshes. The drowned temple appeared suddenly, rising from the mist like a corpse breaking the surface of still water. It was massive, built from black stone carved with symbols that predated language itself. Half of it was submerged in the marsh, but the exposed portion towered 3 stories high, and around it, camped in organized formations, was an army. Miranda counted at least 200 wolves in various forms. Some shifted, some human, all armed and clearly trained for war. Banners flew above the camp, the broken moon's crescent, the crimson ridge's crossed claws, and a new symbol Miranda didn't recognize, a crown being devoured by shadow. "Elvira's personal banner," Kale muttered. "She's declaring herself Alpha Queen." "Over your dead body," Miranda said. "That's the plan," Kale agreed darkly. They could have tried stealth, but there was no point. The moment they'd entered the marshes, Elvira would have felt them through whatever dark magic she was using. Better to walk in openly, with power radiating from every step. Miranda let her shadows flare, a cloak of living darkness that announced her presence. Kale's eyes blazed gold, and the Devourer crown materialized on his head, its trapped souls whispering warnings. They walked straight toward the camp. The wolves saw them coming. Alarms rang out. Warriors scrambled into formation, weapons drawn, but no one attacked. They simply watched as the Alpha King and his keeper strode through their ranks like avenging gods. The path led directly to the temple entrance, where a figure waited. Elvira had aged in 8 years, but not in the way mortals did. She looked harder, colder, carved from ice and malice. Her hair was still dark, swept back from a face that was beautiful and terrible. She wore armor made from bones, wolf bones. Miranda realized with horror and held a staff topped with a crystal that pulsed with sickly green light. "My son," Elvira said, her voice carrying across the silent camp. "You came. I knew you would. You always were predictable." "Mother," Kale said, and the word was flat, emotionless. "You summoned the first hunger. You're going to destroy the world." "I'm going to remake it," Elvira corrected. "The world as it is weak, corrupted by modern sentiment, ruled by creatures like her, that world deserves to end. The first hunger will sweep it clean. And from the ashes, I'll build something pure, something strong." You've gone insane, Miranda said, Elvira's eyes fixed on her, burning with hatred so intense it was almost physical. You took my son from me. You poisoned him with your abyss-touched filth. You turned him into that. She gestured at Cale's transformed state, at the crown of bound darkness on his head. He was supposed to be the greatest alpha king our line had ever known. Instead, he's a half-dead thing wearing a man's skin. He's more powerful than you could ever dream of being, Miranda shot back. And he chose this. Chose me. Chose to save the world instead of feeding it to your ambition. Enough, Cale said, his voice cutting through their argument. This ends now, Mother. Surrender. Dismiss your army. Stop the ritual. There might still be mercy for you. Elvira laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Mercy? From you? Oh, my darling boy, you misunderstand. I'm not asking for mercy. I'm offering it. Join me. Kill the abyss-touched whore. Take your rightful place at my side. Together, we can control the first hunger. Use it instead of being used by it. I'd rather die, Cale said simply. Elvira's expression hardened. That can be arranged. She raised her staff, and the temple behind her began to glow. The symbols carved into its walls ignited with the same sickly green light, and the ground started to shake. It's already begun, Elvira said. The first hunger is waking. In moments, it will break through. And when it does, it will consume everything starting with the two of you. Your bond makes you powerful, but it also makes you a beacon. The hunger feeds on connection, on love, on everything that ties souls together. You've made yourselves the perfect meal. Miranda felt it then, the wrongness rising from beneath the temple. The voice in her mind was screaming, telling her to run, to flee, to save herself. But she looked at Cale, and through the bond, she felt his absolute certainty. They weren't running. Not this time. The hunger demands a sacrifice, Miranda said, stepping forward. The voice told me. A choice between saving the world or saving ourselves. Miranda, Cale started. But there's always been a third option. Miranda continued. We don't sacrifice one or the other. We sacrifice both. We become the seal ourselves, like we did with the Devourer, but permanent this time. Understanding dawned in Cale's eyes. We merge with it, become part of the first hunger, transform it from within. It will destroy us, Miranda said. Everything we are, everything we could be, it'll all be consumed. We'll exist, but not as ourselves. We'll be the seal, the prison, the cage, forever. Elvira was watching them, her confidence faltering for the first time. You're bluffing. No one would willingly. I jumped into the abyss for her when I was 6 years old, Cale said, turning to his mother. I've been willing to die for Miranda since before I understood what death meant. This is no different. He looked at Miranda, and his smile was gentle. Ready to jump one more time? Miranda's eyes filled with tears. Together? One. Always. They clasped hands, and the bond between them ignited like a star. The temple shattered. The ground split open, and rising from the depths came something that was not. The first hunger had no shape, no form, no substance that mortal eyes could comprehend. It was absence given presence, void given hunger, the space between thoughts made manifest. Looking at it directly caused reality to fracture. Wolves in the camp started screaming, their minds breaking from the mere sight of it. But Miranda and Cale didn't look away. They walked toward it, hand in hand, their combined power blazing. No, Elvira shrieked. You'll ruin everything. Stop them. But her army couldn't move. The first hunger's presence had paralyzed them all. Miranda and Cale stood at the edge of the rift, staring down into infinite nothing. I love you, Cale said. I need you to know that. Not because of the bond or the prophecy or the abyss. I love you because you're you. Because you jumped back. I love you too, Miranda whispered. I should have stayed. I'm sorry I left. You came back, Cale said, That's all that matters. The first hunger reached for them, tendrils of unreality wrapping around their bodies. Miranda felt herself beginning to dissolve, not dying, but unmade, broken down into base components. But she held onto Cale's hand, and he held onto hers, and together they let themselves fall. The transformation was agony beyond description. Miranda felt her consciousness expanding, merging with Cale's, merging with the hunger itself. She was everywhere and nowhere. She was the void and the light. She was the seal and the prison and the key all at once. She felt Cale beside her, not beside. Within, their souls twisting together, until there was no him or her, only them. And together they spoke to the first hunger. You consume because you are empty. You destroy because you don't understand creation. But we can teach you. We can show you another way. The hunger raged against them, trying to break free, to devour. But they held firm, not through strength, but through connection. Through the bond that had been forged when a 6-year-old boy jumped into hell for a girl he barely knew. Through the love that had grown across years and transformations and impossible choices. The hunger couldn't understand it, couldn't comprehend how two beings could willingly sacrifice everything for each other. And that confusion became its prison. Slowly, the hunger began to change. The void became less hungry. The emptiness became less absolute. And Miranda and Cale, merged with it, became its eternal seal. On the surface, Elvira watched in horror as the rift sealed itself. The first hunger was gone. Her son was gone. The abyss-touched girl was gone. All her plans, all her schemes, all her hatred rendered meaningless in a single act of selfless love. She fell to her knees in the mud, and for the first time in 8 years, Elvira wept. Robert arrived with reinforcements an hour later. They found Elvira's army scattered, broken, surrendering without a fight. They found the queen herself still kneeling by the sealed rift, muttering incomprehensibly. "Where is my son?" Robert demanded. Elvira looked up at him with empty eyes. Gone. He chose her. Even at the end, he chose her. Robert stared at the sealed rift, at the place where his son had vanished, and felt his heart break. But then something strange happened. The ground began to glow, not with the sickly green of corruption, but with silver and gold, Miranda's power and Cale's, intertwined. And rising from the sealed rift, like flowers growing from scorched earth, came light. Pure, clean, beautiful light that spread across the marshes, healing the corruption, restoring the land. Robert understood then. Cale and Miranda weren't dead. They'd become something else, something greater. They'd become the seal itself, the guardians, the eternal protectors standing between the world and the void. And somewhere, in the space between moments, between heartbeats, between thoughts, two souls held hands and smiled, knowing they'd jump together one last time. And this time, they'd never let go. Chapter 10. The Dynasty. 6 months later, the Crimson Fang pack had rebuilt. The main estate stood taller than before, its walls reinforced with abyss metal that shimmered in the sunlight. The courtyard where the rift had opened was now a memorial garden, filled with night-blooming flowers that glowed silver and gold, after dark a gift from the seal, from the two souls who still watched over them. Robert stood in the throne room, older now, the weight of leadership heavy on his shoulders. He'd taken back the title of Alpha King, though everyone knew it was temporary. He was a steward, nothing more, holding the crown until what? Until Cale and Miranda returned? That seemed impossible. They'd merged with the first hunger, become the eternal seal. They were gone. Except they weren't. Not entirely. Every night, the pack members reported dreams, visions of a silver-eyed woman and a golden-eyed man, walking through the territory, checking on them, protecting them from threats they never saw coming, rogue attacks that mysteriously failed, diseases that suddenly healed, children born with unusual gifts, the ability to see in perfect darkness, to command shadows, to sense danger before it struck. The pack was changing, evolving, touched by the power of their absent king and his queen. Robert walked to the window and looked out over the gardens. A small figure was playing there, chasing butterflies with a stick. A child. A girl, maybe 4 years old, with dark hair and eyes that shifted between silver and gold, depending on the light. She'd appeared 3 months after the sealing, found on the doorstep of the estate, wrapped in a blanket made of shadow cloth. No note, no explanation. Just a child who smelled of the abyss and looked like she could be Cale and Miranda's daughter, if such a thing were possible. Robert had named her Hope because she was exactly that. Hope that the story wasn't over. Hope that love could create life even in the space between worlds. The child looked up, as if sensing his gaze, and waved. Robert waved back. Behind him, the throne room doors opened. Silas entered, looking grim. "More refugees," the beta said. "From the eastern territories. They say Elvira escaped." Robert's jaw tightened. After the battle at the Shadowfen, Elvira had been captured and imprisoned in the deepest cells. She was supposed to be under constant guard, bound with silver chains and abyss wards. "How?" "Someone helped her," Silas said. "We're still investigating, but it looks like she had sympathizers even among the guards. She's been gone for 2 days. The scouts are tracking her, but she knows how to hide," Robert finished. He sighed. "Double the perimeter patrols, and send word to the allied packs Elvira is to be captured on sight and returned here for judgment." "Understood." Silas hesitated. "There's something else. The dreams. They're getting stronger, more specific. Last night, 17 pack members reported the same vision. Cale and Miranda, standing at the border, calling someone home." Robert frowned. "Who?" "We don't know." But Silas was interrupted by a commotion outside. Shouts, running footsteps, the sound of the alarm bell. Robert and Silas rushed to the window. At the main gate, the guards were backing away from a figure that had appeared seemingly from nowhere. A woman, tall and slender, wearing a dress made of liquid shadow. Her hair fell to her waist in dark waves. Her eyes glowed silver. Robert's heart stopped. Miranda? But it wasn't. Not exactly. The woman looked older, her features more refined, more ethereal. She moved with a grace that was barely human, and shadows followed her like loyal pets. Behind her, from the same impossible space, stepped a man. He was massive, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and eyes that burned gold. He wore armor made of darkness itself, and on his head sat a crown that pulsed with contained power. "Cale," Robert breathed. But again, not quite. This version of Cale looked like he'd aged 10 years in 6 months. His face harder, his presence more vast. He moved like a force of nature barely contained in human skin. The pack members were pouring out of buildings, staring in shock and wonder. The 2 figures walked through the gate, and the guards didn't try to stop them. Couldn't have stopped them, even if they'd wanted to. Robert ran down to meet them, Silas close behind. Up close, the changes were even more apparent. Miranda and Cale's skin had a faint luminescence, as if lit from within. Their eyes held depths that went on forever. And when they breathed, the air around them shimmered. "Father," Cale said, and his voice was the same warm, genuine his. "We've come home." "How?" Robert managed. "You merged with the first hunger. You became the seal. How are you here?" "We are still the seal," Miranda said, her voice layered with harmonics that weren't quite natural. "We will always be the seal, but the first hunger has learned. It's changing, becoming less void and more balance. And in that transformation, it's given us the ability to exist in both places at once. We're anchored to the seal," Cale continued. "We can never truly leave it, but we can project ourselves, manifest in this world for periods of time, to check on the pack, to raise our daughter." "Hope," Miranda said, and suddenly the little girl was there, having run from the gardens. She crashed into Miranda's legs, hugging tight. "Hello, my love." "Mama," the child squealed. Then she turned to Kale. "Papa." Kale scooped her up, and the fierce warrior king transformed into a gentle father, kissing his daughter's forehead. "Were you good for Grandpa Robert?" "Very good," Hope declared. Then, more quietly, "I dreamed about you. Every night. You were fighting the dark." "We were," Kale said softly. "And we won. Because of you." Robert felt tears on his cheeks. "I don't understand. She appeared after you fell. How is she?" "The seal required a sacrifice of everything that made us mortal," Miranda explained. "Our humanity, our future, our ability to grow old together. But love is more stubborn than mortality. It found a way. Hope is born from the bond between us, given form by the abyss itself. She's our daughter in every way that matters. And she's the future," Kale added. "When she comes of age, she'll be able to choose. Remain human, or take on the mantle of the seal. Continue what we started." "But that's years away," Miranda said, setting Hope down. The child immediately ran off to play again, apparently unbothered by the cosmic significance of her existence. "For now, we're here to set things right." "Elvira escaped," Robert said. "We're searching for her, but—" "We know," Kale interrupted. "We can sense her. She's in the northern mountains, trying to open another rift. Smaller this time, more controlled. She hasn't learned her lesson." "Then we end this," Robert said. "I'll gather the warriors." "No," Miranda said gently. "This is our responsibility. Kale and I will handle it. Alone." Robert wanted to argue, but looking at what his son and Miranda had become gods wearing mortal faces, powers barely contained, he knew they didn't need an army. "Will you come back?" he asked instead, after. Kale smiled, and for a moment, he looked exactly like the 6-year-old boy who'd jumped into the abyss. "We'll always come back. We're bound to this pack, to this land, to our daughter. The seal doesn't change that. We're just elsewhere, most of the time." Miranda touched Robert's shoulder, and warmth flooded through him, healing old wounds, easing old pains. "Thank you, for taking care of Hope, for holding everything together, for believing we'd find a way." "I'm your father," Robert said roughly. "It's what fathers do." They found Elvira in a cave system deep in the northern mountains, surrounded by the last of her loyal followers, maybe 20 wolves, all desperate, all willing to die for her mad dream. She was chanting over a small rift, no larger than a dinner plate, trying to force it open. "Mother," Kale said, his voice echoing through the cave. "Stop." Elvira spun, her face twisted with rage and something else, desperation, maybe even madness. How are you here? You're supposed to be trapped, sealed away forever." "We are sealed," Miranda said, stepping out of the shadows beside Kale. "And we're here. We can be both. That's the gift the first hunger gave us when it learned to balance void and creation." "Lies," Elvira hissed. "Your projections, illusions. The real you is trapped in that seal, screaming for eternity." "We're not screaming," Kale said quietly. "We're at peace, together, which is more than you'll ever have." Elvira's followers were backing away, realizing they were facing something far beyond their ability to fight. "You took my son from me," Elvira screamed. "You corrupted him, twisted him into this thing." "I saved him," Miranda said, "from falling into the abyss alone, from becoming like you, so consumed by hatred that you'd destroy the world rather than admit you were wrong." "I was never wrong," Elvira's voice cracked. "The old ways kept us strong. The sacrifices ensured our prosperity. You ruined everything." "The old ways killed innocent people," Kale said, "including Miranda. You threw her off a cliff, Mother. She was 19 years old, and you murdered her because you were afraid of what she might become. And look what she did become." Elvira gestured wildly at Miranda. "An abomination. A creature of the abyss. I was right to fear her." "No," Kale said. You were right to fear yourself, because you knew, deep down, that given the same choice, jump into the abyss to save someone you loved, or let them die, you would have chosen yourself. And you couldn't stand that your 6-year-old son was braver than you'd ever been. The words hit like a physical blow. Elvira stumbled backward, her face crumbling. I loved you, she whispered. You were my son, my heir, my legacy, and you chose her. I chose love, Cale corrected, over duty, over legacy, over everything. And I'd do it again. Miranda stepped forward, and despite everything Elvira had done, the assassination attempt, the exile, the summoning of the first hunger, her voice was gentle. It's not too late. Surrender. Let us help you. The abyss can heal even the deepest wounds, if you're willing to let it. For a moment, Elvira wavered. Robert's wife, Cale's mother, the woman she'd been before fear and ambition had consumed her, that woman flickered in her eyes. Then the moment passed. I'd rather die than accept help from you, Elvira said coldly. She turned back to the rift and plunged her hands into it, using her own life force to tear it open. Mother, no! Cale lunged forward, but it was too late. The rift expanded, and something reached through. Not the first hunger that was sealed, but smaller horrors, fragments of corruption that had escaped the purge. They grabbed Elvira, pulling her toward the rift. Cale tried to save her. Miranda tried to seal the rift, but Elvira fought them both, choosing the void over salvation. If I can't have my son, she screamed as the creatures dragged her through, then no one will. The abyss will take you eventually, boy. It always does. The rift snapped shut. Elvira was gone. Cale stood frozen, his hand still outstretched toward where his mother had been. Miranda wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her head against his back. I'm sorry. She chose it, Cale said, his voice hollow. She chose to fall rather than accept help. Some people can't be saved, Miranda whispered. No matter how much we love them, no matter how hard we try. Cale turned in her arms, burying his face in her hair. For a long moment, they just held each other while his mother's followers fled into the night. Finally, Cale pulled back. We should go home. Hope will be waiting. Yes, Miranda agreed. Home. They dissolved into shadow and light, traveling back to the estate, through the spaces between. 10 years later, Hope was 14 now, beautiful and fierce and wild. She had her father's eyes and her mother's gift for shadows. She could shift into a wolf, a massive black beast with eyes that glowed silver gold, and she could walk between the mortal world and the abyss with ease. She was everything Cale and Miranda had hoped for, and more. They visited often now, staying for weeks at a time before returning to the seal. The pack had grown accustomed to their comings and goings, celebrating when they arrived and accepting when they left. Robert had stepped down officially, passing the title of Alpha King to Cale, who ruled from both worlds simultaneously. It was unprecedented, but it worked. The new covenant held strong. No more sacrifices, no more corruption. Just balance, maintained by two souls who'd chosen each other over everything. On Hope's 14th birthday, Cale and Miranda took her to Salvation Point, the place where it had all begun. This is where you jumped? Hope asked, looking down at the platform where the old rift had been. This is where we both jumped, Miranda confirmed. Your father for me for him, multiple times. And you'd do it again? Hope asked. Every single time, Cale said without hesitation. Hope was quiet for a moment, thinking, then, when I'm older, when I have to choose whether to take on the seal, will you be disappointed if I say no? Miranda knelt beside her daughter, cupping her face. We will love you no matter what you choose. The seal is our burden, our choice, not yours. You get to decide your own path. But someone has to maintain the balance, Hope said. If I don't take it, the first hunger might break free again. Then we'll find another way, Cale said firmly. We always do. You don't have to save the world, Hope. You just have to be yourself. Hope smiled, And in that smile, they saw the future bright and unwritten and full of possibility. That night, as they returned to the estate, Hope asked one more question. Do you regret it? Becoming the seal? Giving up your normal lives? Cale and Miranda looked at each other, then at their daughter, then at the packlands spread out below them, thriving, peaceful, protected. No, they said together, because they'd learned the truth that the abyss had tried to teach them from the beginning. Love wasn't about holding on. It was about jumping, about choosing each other, again and again, in every life, in every form, in every impossible situation. They jumped as children into the void. They jumped as adults into transformation. They jumped together into eternity. And they'd do it all again, for each other, for their daughter, for the world they'd sworn to protect. The girl who'd been sacrificed became a goddess. The boy who'd jumped became a king. And together, they built a dynasty that would stand for 1,000 years, not through blood or conquest or power, but through the simple, radical act of choosing love even when the whole world said they shouldn't. Especially then. Epilogue. In the space between moments, in the heart of the seal, two souls danced. Not in sadness or isolation, but in joy. They were everywhere and nowhere. They were the light in the darkness, and the darkness that gave the light meaning. They were the guardians, the protectors, the eternal witnesses to the world they'd saved. And they were happy. Was it worth it? Miranda asked, though asking and answering were the same thing now. Every second, Cale replied. I'd jump 1,000 more times. I love you, she said. I love you too, he answered. Forever. And in the mortal world above, a little girl with silver gold eyes looked up at the stars and smiled, knowing her parents were watching, always protecting, always jumping for each other, always choosing love. Dear viewers, we've reached the end of Miranda and Cale's story. But before you go, I have one question. If you had to choose between saving yourself or saving the person you love most and you couldn't have both, what would you do? Would you jump? Drop your answer in the comments. And I want to know, are you a jumper? Or are you someone who lets others fall alone?